Howdy, everybody, and welcome to yet another Bean on the Scene. I am Alm Bean, and let's get to it. So, we actually do have a football update for the university that is up in Logan, Utah State. They officially released their schedule earlier in the week. So, let's read it off, and I'll give you my thoughts. So, first off, it looks like they have the first game on Saturday, August 30th, at home versus UTEP. Then their next game will be the following week on September 6th at Texas A&M. Then September 13th at home versus Air Force. Then September 20th at home versus McNeese. Then September 27th at Vanderbilt. Then they'll get their first bye week. And then they will be back in action on October 11th at Hawaii. Then October 18th at home versus San Jose State. October 25th at New Mexico. Then their next bye week, then November 8th at home versus Nevada, and then November 15th at UNLV, November 22nd at Fresno State, and then wrapping up their season at home on November 29th versus Boise State. Now, there's some definite losses, there's some definite wins in there. If I'm not mistaken, when I broke down what their preliminary schedule looked like, I believe I said they were going to go 6-6, 4-4 in conference. I looked at these games once again and how they were scheduled. I do believe it'll still be a 6-6 record for them, 4-4 in conference, which is still a big improvement from them from last season. I believe that they are in order going to beat UTEP, lose to Texas A&M, beat Air Force, beat McNeese, lose to Vanderbilt, lose to Hawaii, beat San Jose State, beat New Mexico, beat Nevada, and then they will lose out to UNLV, Fresno State, and Boise State. Now, losing out those final three games, it'll kind of hurt, especially since they'll be 6-3 at that point. But at least they will be bowl eligible, so it'll be fun to see some extra football from the Aggies. But that is where I see them as of right now with zero play. Now let's hop into college basketball with the BYU men's team. They went into arguably their toughest week of the season this past week as they started against number 23 Kansas. Now, with how this game went, you would have thought that BYU was the ranked team in this match. Starting from the 8-minute and 12-second mark in the first half, Trevin Nell with his free throw, BYU outscored Kansas 21-9 to eventually lead to a 46-26 lead going into the half. BYU finished the game with 5 players in double digits with their points and 3 players with at least 3 threes made, with Richie Saunders leading the charge with 22 points, 2 rebounds, and 3 assists on 9 of 13 shooting and 4 of 8 from the perimeter. This performance led to an impressive 91-57 win for the Cougars, which ended up being the worst loss for Kansas since like the last 50 years against a unranked opponent. So that's really letting you know how big of a win this was for BYU. But with that one, their next matchup ended up being the talk of the town as they were welcoming, or not welcoming, they traveled to number 19, Arizona. So two top 25 teams in 1 week. Super difficult, but both teams started off hot. They were shooting 50% from the field, 45% from the perimeter. Cannon Catchings, he shot 4 of 6 from the perimeter, along with 2 steals off the bench. Kebakeda, he shot a perfect 5 for 5 from the field. And even with Yegor Demon still struggling to shoot from the perimeter, going 1 for 5 in this game, he made up for it with his ability to facilitate the ball, getting 8 assists, but a lingering 6 turnovers in the process. For Arizona, even with the likes of Caleb Love getting 27 points, 3 rebounds, 5 assists, and Toby Awaka with 14 points, 10 rebounds, and 2 assists to keep them within striking distance, it all came down to the final couple of seconds with the whether or not Richie Saunders sold the foul against Henry Visar. Uh, Based off the replay that I saw, it did look like Visar leaned into the hip of Saunders to create the contact. I mean, I would technically call it a foul, but with where the game was, with how much intensity there was at that point, I believe that is not a foul you call because that is now all that anyone will talk about with this game rather than the phenomenal gameplay that happened throughout the entirety of this game. But BYU ended up get the nail biting win, 96-95, and it was enough to give BYU a top 25 spot at number 25, and Joe Lenardi's bracketology gave them a number 8 seed. Now for their upcoming games, their next one will be tomorrow on Wednesday, February 26th at Arizona State. In my opinion, that should be a gimme game for them. But then their next game will be on Saturday, March 1st versus West Virginia. That game will be on ESPN2 at 8 p.m. Mountain Time. It should be a slightly more difficult, but win nonetheless for BYU. But West Virginia is currently listed as a number 10 seed in the bracketology. Now, for the BYU women's team, they're really struggling down the stretch. They've lost 4 of their last 5, including their 2 games they did played this week, which was a 65-57 loss at Arizona and an 85-73 loss at home to Arizona State. At this point, they're almost fighting for the worst position in the conference, but not quite there yet. But it's still a little disappointing to see that they are hitting this slump. Now, for their next games, they will be playing tonight, February 25th versus Kansas, which will be their home finale. Uh, I mean, in my opinion, this is a throwaway game. There's nothing really to fight for except for their pride. But they will then be finishing up their regular season on the road at Utah. And if I were BYU, why not ruin Utah's season and maybe kill where their seeding is, as they are currently a number 7 seed. Now, for the Utah men's team, they only had 1 game this week because if you remember from the previous episode, they played 3 games in 7 days. But they traveled to Orlando to take on UCF. This game, it felt pretty back and forth throughout the entire contest, especially in the first half. UCF just had a 30-29 lead. But in the second half, both teams kicked it into gear as they both scored over 40 points. Gabe Madsen was shooting lights out with 23 points, 3 rebounds, 1 assist, going 8 for 12 from the field, 5 of 9 from 3. But Mustafa Thyme and the Knights pulled off the 76-72 win. The day after this loss, though, Utah pulled a very shocking move and fired their head coach, Craig Smith. Feels like a move that you should have waited till the end of the season to make, but the move was made. This was Smith's 4th season, and he had a 65-62 record while at Utah. During those 4 seasons, he had failed to reach the NCAA tournament throughout his tenure. He did make it to the NIT, accepting that invitation, and made a run to the semifinals, but that wasn't enough for Utah. Now, Josh Eilert will take place of that head coaching job as the interim for now, but rumors are starting to circulate that there are 2 former Utah Utes that are up for that vacant position. One of them being Andre Miller, former point guard and current Grand Rapids Gold G League head coach for the Denver Nuggets G League affiliate, and then Alex Jensen, who used to be a part of the Utah Jazz coaching staff during Quinn Snyder's tenure as an assistant, but now is currently an assistant coach for the Dallas Mavericks. Now, it would be a great move for Andre Miller because going from G League head coach to collegiate G League, or not collegiate G League, from G League coach to collegiate coach, especially at the head coaching position, I feel like that would be deemed a upgrade. But um, for Alex Jensen, I feel like this would be the perfect move for him because given how the front office is currently running in Dallas, you have no idea what they are thinking at this moment. And if there are any sort of moves that are going on in Dallas now that there's what has been rumored little communication to Jason Kidd, does that mean that he is potentially out as their head coach? And does that mean that a new regime will start there as well, meaning no job for Alex Jensen? So might as well jump ship while you can. But even with the interest that is there, I have heard rumors that it's either Andre Miller for head coach or Alex Jensen for head coach. Or I've also heard the two being a 1-2 punch joining the Utes program. So it'll be interesting to see how that position will fill either some point in the season or during the off season. But either way, I am very intrigued to see how that coaching carousel will end up into Utah. Now, for their upcoming games, they will play tomorrow, February 26th, at number 22 Arizona. I expect vengeance in this game, especially just with how they recently played against BYU. Uh, Plus, they're a number 4 seed, and now without Craig Smith there, I do expect some miscommunication from Utah and Arizona taking advantage of that. But they will also play on Saturday, March 1st, at home versus Arizona State. They're at the bottom of the conference, but with the current state of the team, this might be a game that Arizona can coast on by and catch Utah slipping. Now, for the Utah women's team, to start off their week, they played against number 24 Oklahoma State. But even with Oklahoma State coming to Salt Lake as the ranked opponent, they were the underdog. Utah did have control for a majority of this game, but a surging Oklahoma State behind Micah Gray, who had 18 points, 1 rebound, 1 assist, ended up outscoring Utah 18-8 in the fourth quarter. That eventually led to the 68-64 win for the Cowboys. They had to put that loss behind them pretty quickly as they went onto the road to face Cincinnati, where they handled business. Thanks to Gianna Neepkins, who had 25 points, 4 rebounds, and 3 assists, and Kennedy McQueen, who had 17 points, 2 rebounds, 4 assists, making a combined 11 3-pointers. Utah was able to get an easy 92-65 win. Now, for their upcoming games, they will be playing tomorrow on the road, February 26th, at number 18 West Virginia. They are considered the number 6 seed in Joe Lunardi's bracketology, and I do anticipate this one to be a photo finish. Very exciting game to come through. But then Utah will wrap up their regular season at home on March 3rd, not March 31st, March 1st, against BYU. And like I stated earlier, I think BYU will put a lot of heart into this game because there's not a postseason hope for BYU. So why not try and scramble things up for your in-state rival? Now, for the Utah State men's team, they got to start their week against San Jose State, and the Spartans probably wish they didn't see the Aggies. Utah had 9 of their players shoot 50% from the field or better. 6 players shoot 50% from the perimeter or better, and 5 players with double-digit points. Ian Martinez led Utah State with 22 points, 3 rebounds, and 3 assists on 7 of 9 shooting and 2 of 3 from the perimeter to give the Aggies the easy 105-57 win. And that's not a typo. 105-57 win. But San Diego State must have seen that last score because they were not going down without a fight. In the second half, San Diego State was going shot for shot with USU. Barely any turnovers in this one from either team to really break away and start any sort of run. But Dexter Akino put the Aggies on his back, scoring 26 points on 9 of 12 shooting, 7 of 9 from the perimeter to get the 79-71 win. Now, with USU cutting things close in a lot of their games recently, they are currently a number 9 seed in Joe Lunardi's bracketology. And funny enough, they are projected to play number 8 seed BYU in the first round. That would make a lot of headlines. I don't expect things to stay that way, but, it's a fun little laugh going into postseason talk. Now, for USU's upcoming games, tomorrow they will play on February 26th at Boise State at 8:30 p.m. Mountain Time on FS1. I do expect this one to be a little tough, but I do expect the Aggies to be fine. But if you want to get a little more insider knowledge, tune into Scotty G on 1280 a.m. on the KSL Sports Zone starting at 8 p.m. Mountain Time for pregame. And then they will play on Saturday, March 1st at Colorado State at 2 p.m. Mountain Time on FS1 as well. Colorado State, they are 12-4 in conference, so this might be a sneaky team that USU does not want to let past them. But again, you can listen to Scotty G on the KSL Sports Zone 30 minutes before tip off, which for this game will be at 1:30 p.m. Mountain Time. Now, for Utah State's women's team, if you have been following these episodes, you probably assume what happened. They played 2 games, they lost 2 games. But on the bright side, they didn't lose by over 10 points in either of these games. The losses nonetheless. So they are now 2-25 on the season, 1-14 in conference play. I mean, at this point, if I were a player, staff member, I'd be counting down the days for the end of the season. But their next games are going to be tomorrow on Wednesday, February 26th at home versus San Jose State. And then Saturday, March 1st at home versus Nevada. In my opinion, 2 home games, 0 confidence. Now, for a team that I have a lot of confidence in, it's going to be Utah Valley. Their men's team, they're still sticking to that 14 seed according to Joe Lunardi's bracketology, but teams are starting to figure out how the Wolverines play. Utah Tech, they gave UVU a scare as they were able to keep things super close as the Wolverines got the 79-77 victory. Really close one, really scary. That game could have potentially ruined all of their hopes to get into that NCAA tournament. But their next game against Seattle University, they even cut things close. But UVU got the win 61-55. Wins nonetheless, but a little scary. But their upcoming games, they only have 1 game over the next week. And this one's going to be on Saturday, March 1st at home versus Southern Utah University. They played each other on February 15th, where UVU won 70-68. So this might be a fun rematch to catch on ESPN Plus if you have access to it. I know I at least will be keeping tabs on how this game is going because the Wolverines are starting to look like a very exciting team, and I really hope that they have that Cinderella potential once they reach the NCAA tournament. Now, a team that we haven't talked about here on Being on the Scene, because they just haven't been playing, but they just started their play this last week, is Real Salt Lake. MLS is back in session, but they started with the CONCACAF play against Herediano. It seemed like Herediano was a little more offensively focused. They outshot Real Salt Lake 16-7 in this game, but the game ended in a draw 0-0. But Real Salt Lake went from San Jose, Costa Rica to San Jose, California, as they started their first MLS match of the season against the San Jose Earthquakes. Scoring started in the 28th minute as Jamar Ricketts redirected one past Rafael for the 1-0 lead. Now, once substitutions started happening around the 70th minute mark, that's when the scoring barrage started. Rodriguez, Vitor Costa, and Oseni Buda scored all within a 15-minute span to give San Jose the very convincing 4-0 win over Real Salt Lake. It was rough. It looked like Real Salt Lake was gassed. They just didn't have a striker to really give them any confidence throughout this game. Diego Luna, he was doing everything in his power to try and keep Real Salt Lake in this one. But at this point, you have to do something with this roster or you're going to see more games with this type of result. And fans are not going to love that at all. But as far as their upcoming games, they will be playing tomorrow, Wednesday, February 26th, once again against Herediano for the second leg of the CONCACAF tournament. That game will be on 102.7 FM and the X Stream on the KSL Sports app, where the pregame will start at 5:30 p.m. Mountain Time on the KSL Sports Zone. But then they will return to MLS play on March 1st versus the Seattle Sounders FC at 2:30 p.m. Mountain Time. But again, you can catch the pregame show on 97.5 FM on the KSL Sports Zone for their pregame. starting at 1:30 p.m. Mountain Time. Now, we move on to the Utah Jazz, which we anticipate them to lose, but they return from the All Star break with 3 games in 4 days. But thankfully for them, all 3 of those games were at home. First game was against Oklahoma City, and it was rough, but Utah did have a majority of their normal rotational players back, except for Colin Sexton, who is still dealing with an ankle injury. Lowry Markkinen had probably his worst game in a Jazz uniform. He was 2 of 14 from the field, 1 of 7 from the 3-point line, had 5 points, 4 rebounds, and 1 assist. Walker Kessler, he's still showing that he has made a major leap since last year, grabbing 19 rebounds. Isaiah Collier still showing that he's a diamond in the rough with 12 assists along with his 4 turnovers. And then Keontae George is showing that, weirdly enough, he's doing a lot better off the bench than in the starting unit, as he had 20 points, 3 rebounds, and 6 assists. But even with John Collins going 11 for 19 from the field, Utah was no match for Oklahoma City as the Thunder win the Williams brother rivalry 130 to 107. Next, Utah had Houston on the second night of a back to back and giving the newly acquired forward KJ Martin his first career start in a Jazz uniform. Utah had 3 double doubles in this game, with Collier having 12 points and 10 assists, Kessler with 11 points, 17 rebounds, and Markkinen with 23 points and 10 rebounds. Even with Jalen Green, Alperen Sengun, and Amen Thompson each scoring 20 plus points, Utah got the surprising 124 to 115 win. Now, wrapping up the week, Utah had the battle against Portland, uh, and Utah was without Jordan Clarkson, John Collins, Walker Kessler, Larry Markkinen, or Colin Sexton. So you would think that Portland would probably dominate this game, especially in the boards, but you would be wrong. Portland, they did win the rebound battle, 51 to 45, but again, it was a lot closer than most people probably would have anticipated, especially with guys like Donovan Clingan down there in the paint, and he's just a monster. Um, but Kyle Filipowski, he did have himself a night, having a career best in PRA with 20 points, 11 rebounds, and 5 assists, filling in for Walker Kessler. Cody Williams probably had his best game in a Jazz uniform, in my opinion, with 8 points, 8 rebounds, and 5 assists. And though he looked rough throughout the game, Keontae George, he hit shots in the clutch when it was needed most. He ended up scoring 8 of Utah's final 10 points, including back-to-back threes that put Utah within 1 point with just a handful of seconds left, 113 to 112. Now, after Jeremy Grant was fouled and went 1 for 2 from the free throw line, giving Portland the 114 to 112 lead, Utah had 3 seconds to capitalize on having the ball. Now, they took the timeout, progressing the ball to the half court, and based off of how things were going, both Bryce Sensabaugh and Keontae George were shooting phenomenally. So you had to get the ball into one of their hands. Uh, Cody Williams with the inbound got it to Keontae George, and unfortunately, the ball just didn't hit his hands cleanly, and he had to force it up, and the ball ended up falling short to give Utah the 114 to 112 loss. Now, for their upcoming games, they will be playing the rest of these games at home, starting tomorrow, Wednesday, February 26th versus Sacramento. Then on Friday, February 28th versus Minnesota. Then Sunday on March 2nd versus New Orleans. And then wrapping up the homestand and back-to-back on Monday, March 3rd versus Detroit. Now, these games, this is really the final sort of back end stretch for Utah to decide who they really want in the draft. Everybody's looking at Cooper Flag, but there are a lot of other guys in this draft that you need to consider, whether it's Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey, VJ Edgecombe, Kasparas Yakachunas, Trey Johnson, Yegor Demin. There's a lot of high quality prospects that are in this draft, but now is where you're going to see where Utah's cards lie based off of how they play in games like these. Now, for the Utah Hockey Club, they are doing the exact opposite. They are fighting for a playoff position, but they were back in action starting on Saturday because they've been out for 2 weeks due to the Four Nations break. But Saturday, they were on the road against the Los Angeles Kings. Now, the highlight of this game, and in my opinion, I didn't think that he would be the guy that would get this milestone. But Barrett Hayton became the first player in Utah Hockey Club history to record a hat trick. Now, it kind of sucks that he wasn't able to record it at the Delta Center, but nonetheless, he was able to get a hat trick, a super difficult feat, and congratulations to him to getting his name in the history books. But now, even though he did get the hat trick, it did leave a bitter taste in fans' mouths as Utah lost 5-3 in this historic game. Now, the following night, Utah had to get back on a plane back to Salt Lake City to face the Quinn Hughesless Vancouver Canucks. Now, this game had a lot of meaning and emotion behind it, with Sean Dursey making his first return to the Delta Center since the inaugural game. And then Logan Cooley, he had been dealing with some injuries and he was a game time decision. And he ended up actually playing in this one. So it was really great to see two guys that fans really backed behind being able to hit the ice. Now, for the first period, it felt like it was a chess match. There wasn't a lot of shots going on. It was super physical, but no points on the board as they finished 0-0 at the intermission. But quick out of the intermission, Jake DeBrusque, he broke the goose egg just shy of 2 minutes into the second period, giving Vancouver the 1-0 lead. But Utah didn't give the Canucks too long to celebrate that goal as Logan Cooley scored 2 minutes later on a power play to tie things up 1-1. Now, with time winding down in the third period, Nick Schmaltz was feeling some momentum on Utah's side, and he ended up taking the shot near the blue line just for Dylan Gunther to tip it right in to give Utah what would eventually end up being the game-winning goal as Utah won 2-1. Now, for their upcoming games, they will actually be playing tonight, which is why you see me in my gear. As soon as I finish recording this, I am heading straight to the Delta Center as the hockey club will be taking on the Chicago Blackhawks. Then on Thursday, they will be at home on February 27th versus the Minnesota Wild. And then on Saturday, March 1st, at home versus the New Jersey Devils. All in my opinion, I believe these games are all must wins if Utah wants to stay within playoff contention, since they are 4 points out from the second wild card spot, which currently Vancouver holds. But with how the West has been this season, Utah needs to decide right now if they want to invest in their draft capital or if they want to invest in their playoff hopes. So, that being said, today, February 25th, marks the fifth day of 11 straight days of either a Utah Hockey Club or a Jazz game at home. So, if you're sitting back, not doing anything, see if there's any available tickets. See if a friend wants to take you to one of these games. Go support these teams as their seasons are winding down, including tonight, the Utah Hockey Club. They have 13 more home games left this season. And same for the Utah Jazz. They have 13 more games left this season. 13 more home games, that is. But, support your home teams, whether they win or lose. Might as well show that camaraderie, whether you feel that they are a winning team or not. You know, just go there for the environment and the community. But that is another Bean on the Scene, and I am Alma Bean, and y'all enjoy the rest of your day.